Welcome to the conversation. Today, I'd like to explore the evolution model. This is something that I stumbled upon um, when looking at the second core, which I recorded a conversation on previously. So, when examining that and kind of taking a dive deep into how that relates to scalability and the not only that, but to how leveraged value would look. It really lent to this development, which is a predictive model of scalability. When we understand these steps, this framework, we will understand the journey and the terrain ahead. So if we were to take this from, as you can see, Bootstrapper all the way to investor, there is a type of sophistication, a type of acumen that tends to grow along with the company. And this is absolutely fascinating because it will help you, it will map out your journey for you so that you absolutely know what you need to do in order to progress forward, in order to scale or to continue to scale. It is absolutely foundational, I think. It is moving from stumbling in the dark, guessing, to intentional, on purpose execution, knowing intimately your controls, your KPIs, um, your scope, your timetable for completing such a journey just makes it such a fascinating journey. And it's so predictive when you get through these stages. Of course, we're going to take a general perspective on things, but this model allows for such predictability that when you consider what it is you want to do, a project you want to take on, a goal you want to achieve in the business, you will be hesitant to set those because you know exactly what type of work that's going to take. And so you absolutely weigh your options carefully. It's no longer shooting in the dark, or it's no longer based on a feeling, but it's data driven decision making. And it's profound and it's poetic. It's just a fascinating model. So let's get to it. So I'm just gonna describe the columns, the titles in the columns. The first one is stage, which is just the categories of growth as you move from bootstrapper to executive, then on to investor. The stage is really your area of focus as you move through. So in bootstrapping, it's identifying your core competencies and a measure of value that you can offer the marketplace. Very simple. It's this sort of story of you stumbling about, trying to figure out what you want to offer. And if you're offering something, it's still kind of clumsy. You're still kind of clumsy because you haven't really received the uh, the core of the customer's feedback. It's just in the beginning stages. I would say this whole bootstrapper sort of stage is I would say it lasts from 12 to 24 months. You know, if you come from if you have a business background and you're just like a serial entrepreneur, or you're just talented, you may get through it faster. But I think for the most part, if you're starting afresh, maybe have some experience, that 12 to 24 months is probably a good hitting point, enough to gather data, enough to learn, enough to grow, enough to know what you need to do to be able to get to that next level. Um, so this is you with your core competencies, refining your position, maybe uh, iterating, reiterating uh, your um, your core competencies because the market is just not responding the way you want to. So it's this sort of really kind of messy uh, kind of stage. Next is the intrinsic. This is the internal strengths and capabilities that you have, that you grow into as an individual and as a team as you begin to put your team together. This is defining, again, those core strengths, identifying specialized skills as you kind of come into your own and you begin to recognize your unique capabilities. Um, and that's probably, I would say 9 to 12 months into that journey, it's like you begin to get a handle on this sort of thing. You begin to get a handle on, what you need to do. Getting tired of inadequacies, really, getting on yourself to learn more, to grow, because you're beginning to understand the journey ahead. And then the outward side of that is the extrinsic, outward contribution and value. So intrinsically, you're taking this sort of strengths and this conversation about value and core competencies, and this just exemplifies you taking that in service in contribution to the marketplace. So you identified here you've identified what problem you want to solve. And our last episode really spoke to that, really kind of understanding what type of compensation you want from the market, and then with that, deciding on how complex the problem that you want to solve is, and kind of gaining that sort of perspective and leverage in this area. So it's this exchange. You're solving a problem, and the market's paying you to solve that problem. And so it's sort of this uh, negotiation that becomes more predictable, as you progress or as you move forward. Now, the key activities in these sort of areas where you're looking at core competencies, sort of standard value in your ability to solve a problem, your ability um, to bring a solution to a situation, business business to business or business to consumer. So you can get to solutions through different methods. So you can solve a problem with a different set of core competencies. Uh, Case in point, if somebody has a revenue problem and they want more revenue, well, you can come in as a sales trainer and uh, pitch them on that. You can come in as a human resource professional and help them to gain the most out of their human capital or human resources in order to increase um, effectiveness. You can come in as an operations consultant and help them to save, so thereby increasing uh, their their profitability because you've reduced expenses, and with the same revenue that's coming in, reduction in expenses, more efficient operations, uh, um, a, a rise of revenue, an incline in revenue. So there's all sorts of ways you could come at a problem. So, but you're doing it through your core competencies. Whatever you've chosen or how you show up with your strengths, you're executing against a well-defined problem and bringing a solution to that problem. So that's that. The key activities illustrate, um, really assesses core strengths, defines customer benefits. It's a very simple first stage. Couple years in, doing this consistently, uh, picking up the value, being predictable. That's the name of this game. And then the outcome would be a clear understanding of strengths, competitive advantage through practice. Practice makes perfect. You taking your core competencies and your unique capabilities, and then executing those against the problem to get the result. Doing this enough times, getting great practice. Then something starts to happen. There's a shift that begins to take place. So the shift, and this is not a clear cut, it's not like you go to sleep, a bootstrapper, and then wake up the next day and then you're a sophisticated executive. It's an evolution. It's a progressive. Progressive. Excuse me. So at the executive stage, um, you're identifying the second core. You understood your core competencies, and you began to search for the story that we spoke about in previous conversations, which brings you to the second core. And so it's really then assembling, and it takes time to do that. Even when you discover the story, it takes time to adapt, to adopt those sort of principles into an active narrative, to put your protocols in place. Um, that's after testing it, after, validating your sort of hypotheses. And so that's this sort of thing. It just takes time to evolve that. But that's the direction you're going. You're seeing more of that. As the months progress, you're finding new ways to do that, or new ways to enlarge that sort of vision, new programs, new systems, new protocols, new models, new frameworks to develop and to introduce and to live in that story that you've identified as a second core. And now you begin to look at not just standard value, but you begin to look at maximizing your value chain. So, so how do you do this? So your value chain consists of a few things, this is going into the intrinsic column at this stage, at this level. So this is establish efficient resource management, optimize processes and workflows, and then define customer product slash service. And this is as you are continuing to move in that story dynamic. Really tighten up the narrative. Really understanding the who, why, what, where, when, and how of your customers' interactions with you, your product, your service. So, but it's really the defining point is the maturity in the story as it's developing, and to be able to maximize efficiency, to be able to break down, how you're managing your resources. And these all leading to providing more value to your customer. And so this is that. You're taking the components apart from the value chain, looking for ways to measure. KPIs come into conversation at this time. How can you ensure that you have maximized your efficiency in the management of your resources? Understanding the goal of resource use. How do you maximize the efficient use of your resources toward the goal of increasing revenue? And then optimizing processes and workflows, setting strategic goals, key performance indicators, really beginning to use data. This is this stage. It's evolved from a sort of intuitive sort of journey of the Bootstrapper, where you lick your thumb and extend your arm and try to determine what direction the wind is coming from. And then you move according to whatever drift you feel. It's really, stab in the dark to let's get some data, let's make some some decisions based on real information, not just intuition. So this is that sort of journey and the maturity level, and really putting in place these controls, the KPIs to monitor to ensure that you're on point. This is the stage your team is growing. You're growing your executive team, your support staff, as well as seeing, looking at data even regarding them and human resources, ensure they're engaged, ensure you're doing internal customer surveys, kind of taking it in that direction. So that's so we kind of looking at things a little holistically. So let's go back to the column. So after we understand the intrinsic or internal strengths and capabilities in this quadrant, then we can move to the next, which is the extrinsic, which is again the refining of the second core, understanding more and more, and again adapting or adopting KPIs about that engagement with the customer, about their response to components of your story, to components of the value chain. We put inputs, ensure sufficient capabilities, just as we spoke about. So, but this is in your contribution. Output and delivery. That's a big one in this quadrant. That's your contribution to the market. And then ensuring a smooth and effective delivery of your product or service. And then you employ the customer feedback loop in your value chain. So it's really about taking these intrinsic values and then serving the customer, getting customer feedback, implementing change, iterating, and then doing it all over again, to the betterment, getting used to bigger and bigger data sets, getting used to sort of scaling your systems, your processes through the use of automation, becoming more sophisticated about your market, becoming more sophisticated about your supply chain, your value chain, your customer, your employees. This is really where you kind of grow and scale not only the business but your acumen, your sense of sophistication in what you're doing, your leadership, your management. This is part of that. The key activities, as illustrated and as we kind of weaved in and out of what we're going to look at in this area, is to identify critical KPIs in the value chain, optimize workflows, feedback loops, define and refine input, resources, materials, map and optimize processes to ensure smooth transitions, ensure efficient outputs or delivery of the final product or service, integrate customer feedback to refine and improve operations. It's kind of a cycle or cyclical work. Every time you're going through it, you're improving it, then going through it again, improving it, etc. And then the outcome is a well-structured, optimized value chain, effective service and product delivery, continuous improvement through feedback-driven adjustments. So you're going through this, you're gaining ground and sophistication, using systems thinking, using data, more and more data, and as you're growing and scaling your customer base, your team, your business overall. So this is the stage of the executive, very sophisticated, very scalable, sort of execution. Next we get to the investor mindset. Now it's interesting how we move from identifying the second core and then maximizing components of the value chain, taking it apart and making sure you are taking advantage of everything you can find in that value chain. Okay, the next one is leveraging value. This is the ability to create big results with little movement, and so which is a very powerful place to be. And then as far as the customer is concerned, it's a journey toward meaningfulness. And here, although this smaller framework in here may change, but the idea is adapting or adopting the 5 love languages for your customer base. That this is really where you make a difference. This is moving above the business so that you can see people as people and to make the contribution, to take time to make the contribution in the lives of stakeholders. So this is a very powerful stage to be in. And so it's leveraging value and then moving from people as a sort of utility to building upon your story into this sort of quest for meaningfulness. And then the intrinsic for this is expand competencies, through partnerships and scaling strategies. So in this scenario, it would be like if you had an agreement with a very large organization, say 3 times the size of yours, and they wanted to white label your product or service as their own because you just did it so well, then they would have this inflow or influx, provide you with this influx of customers. And at that point, the business development partnerships would act as investors, infusing you with cash and demand. So this is kind of that stage, and not only in the business development area, but you would really look at your value chain, look at the results, and strategically begin to form strategies and partnerships so that you can scale the most out of each part of that value chain. And then the extrinsic scale value delivery through strategic alliances, optimizing value chain expansion, the journey toward meaningfulness. So this is really about you becoming more sophisticated in leveraging your movement for more effective scalability throughout your organization. And then, of course, we've kind of woven the sort of activities throughout the conversation about this stage, but so we have implement scaling strategies, adjust operations to maximize impact. Exponential growth would be the outcome through strategic leverage, deeper emotional connection and engagement, fostering long-term loyalty and fulfillment. And that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. But this grid's here for you to study. And so I think I'm going to bring in AI to assist and maybe walk us through some stories. And then it will really help us to bring these attributes home.